Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another Project Baraka podcast special with myself, Sadia, Ustada Isra, and Mufti Moino. Ustada Isra is a teacher in Global Madrasa, and Mufti Moino is an Arabic and Tafsir instructor at the Quran Institute. So, in yesterday's episode, we continued with the second ayah of Surah Al Fatiha, and we continued to discuss the different types of rahmah that Allah transcends on us. We also talked about liberal autonomy versus rahmah. And one key lesson for myself was that sometimes we label a thing as bad and other things as good. But in reality, something that we perceive as being bad is actually good for us. And it is Allah that is protecting us from a greater test. We need to also check, our biases and ensure that our mindset is grounded in Islam and that it hasn't been affected by a liberal mindset. And even during our tests, we must ensure that we are in obedience to the Lord of the world. So in today's episode, we will inshallah talk about the third ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, and today's theme will be fear, hope, and accountability. So let's begin inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan, Ustadha Sadia and Mufti Moino for joining today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa bihi nasta'een, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. And welcome back to our Quranic Odyssey gathering as we continue reflecting on the greatest surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Fatiha. And as Ustadha Sadia mentioned, we are going to continue on the third ayah, which is Maliki Yawmiddin, which translates to the Master of the Day of Judgment. And there are two narrations that are both mutawatir, meaning mass transmitted recitations of this ayah. One of them is Maliki Yawmiddin with an alif. Another one is Maliki Yawmiddin. And Maliki Yawmiddin means one who has ownership. It means ownership. But when you say Malik means the king. So both translations are correct. One would mean that Allah is the king of the Day of Judgment. The other one would mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of the Day of Judgment. And when we look at both words, Malik, we can imagine it that someone that owns a property. Malik would mean is someone like the king. He manages and he has authority. He approves, he disapproves. He puts the laws, but he doesn't necessarily own anything. But when it comes to the property owner, he can own, but he doesn't necessarily own the command or doesn't own the authority to have any laws or to put any laws or to take any laws. So they say that ليس كل مالك ملك. Not every owner is a king, and ليس كل ملك مالك. Not every king is an owner. There is an ayah, I think, in the Surah Al-Baqarah that kind of also explains this, which is إن الله قد بعث لكم طالوت ملكا. So Talut, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that he is going to be a king upon Bani Israel, a lot of them they didn't agree on this because he wasn't rich, like he didn't own much. So that also shows that the king doesn't necessarily always mean that he owns everything. But in the Arabic language, there are some scholars that say that the Malik has a greater meaning than Malik, and some of them say that Malik can also mean that, like, it has a greater, more deeper meaning because it can also mean that he also owns things. But in the Quran, this difference of recitation in both the Malik and Malik, it shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is not only the owner, he's the owner of the Day of Judgment and also the king of that day. So that is the linguistic meaning of the Malik and the Malik. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has sovereignty and ownership of that day. And also, in Surah Al-Fatiha, when it's mentioned Rabbil Alameen, so why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mention that Maliki Yawmiddin, the king of the Day of Judgment, or the owner of the Day of Judgment, without mentioning the dunya? It's because in the previous ayah, Allah already mentioned Rabbil Alameen, which meaning it already means that he owns everything in the dunya and also the akhirah. And yes, there is a hadith that I forgot to mention that speaks about the conversation. So Surah Al-Fatiha, it is a conversation. It is a speech that we have between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we pray salah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the hadith قال الله تعالى قسمت الصلاة بيني وبين عبدي نصفين ولعبدي ما سأل, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that I have divided the salah between me and my slave into two parts, and my slave has what he wants. فإذا قال العبد الحمد لله رب العالمين, if the slave says الحمد لله رب العالمين, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says حمدني عبدي, my servant has praised and thanked me. وإذا قال الرحمن الرحيم, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says أثنى علي عبدي, meaning my servant has praised me. وإذا قال الله مالك يوم الدين, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says قال مجدني عبدي, my servant has glorified me. وقال مرة in another, I guess, narration, it says فوض إلي عبدي, my servant has entrusted his affairs to me. فإذا قال إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين, if the servant says إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين, قال الله هذا بيني وبين عبدي ولعبدي ما سأل. This is between me and my servant, and for my servant what he asked. And then
SubhanAllah. I was going to say, Ustada, if there's a conversation happening like this, how would we recite Surah Al-Fatiha? Like, would we imagine that when we're saying like Maliki Yawmuddin, Majjadani Abdi, Hamidani Abdi, like the fact that Allah is responding, and obviously it's hard to comprehend that there's 2 billion Muslims all reciting it, many of them at the same time, and Allah is in the manner that befits Him. He's responding to all of us. That Allah is Mujib, He answers everybody. So I think if you knew that, you might pause to think of where's that response from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if I'm going to just run alhamdulillah, like people race through it like a sprint. So
yes. I think there was I think there was a time when there was a question that came from I was in a class, and there was a question that came from one of the students, and he said, are we allowed to like pause in between the ayah, every ayah, to kind of have more like tadabbur and kind of have the meaning of this hadith of like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responding to us. But yes, it is something to think about and reflect on. And the last ayah, which is the dua that we make every day in Surah Al-Fatiha, which says اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين قال هذا لعبدي ولعبدي ما سأل, which means this is for my servant and for my servant what he asked. So subhanAllah, even the whole introduction of Surah Al-Fatiha, like the praise and the thanks, and then the mentioning of the Day of Judgment, mentioning Allah Rahman Ar-Rahim, all of it leads to the dua of اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
SubhanAllah. I'm thinking, to be honest with you, that Malik Yawmuddin, where does it come in the surah? It's situated after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kind of established shukr, thanks, love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then as you move on, you have this sense of hope, that Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, that frailty and being flawed, being someone who's definitely going to make mistakes. That someone like that, it positions you as someone who will be seeking Allah's rahmah through tawbah, istighfar, and all of these things. So it's set up in a way where you're traversing from this love and shukr for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you're going through another gate. These are all like spiritual gates of Surah Al-Fatiha. So you've gone through the gate of thankfulness and love. Then you're going through a second gate with Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, where you're at awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of His mercy, and you're filled with hope. But then also the thing that kind of sets the balance between fear and hope and fear is the counterbalance of fear. And I think that's something that we tend to avoid in dawah discourse. Okay, in the dawah discourse, most people care about providing hope in talks and events and so on, not realizing that when we're on the motorway, okay, there's warnings, isn't it? Right? Oh, there are cameras on this road. There are children. There are school children crossing this road. So there are constant reminders and admonitions and warnings. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if those on the road it said something like, hopefully you won't run over a child. It'll be a nice thing today if you go home without speeding. right? I don't know how much that would impact people on the road, right? So it shows that hope is definitely there and is necessary, but it also has to be counterbalanced with, fear and admonition and a fear of thinking about consequence. Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner and the possessor of the last day. Do you see? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally the owner. That means, what are we talking about? The owner of the last day. Maliki Yawmiddin. Yeah. It means that that day of hisab, that day of accountability, everything inside it, the people inside it, the deeds, the actions, the everything, Allah is the owner of it all. Do you see? It's like if in my pocket I have, if I own the pocket, then that means everything inside the pocket is mine. If I own the wallet, everything inside my wallet belongs to me. So the fact is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ownership, and He has full control, and He has the authority, right? And it's an interesting thing, because if you look at other religions and other ways of life, you can see that all sort of ideologies and religions start out with this perspective of, is there a God? Okay. Is there a Rabb? Is there uluhiyah? Is this true? Right. And a large percentage of humanity, when we arrive at this point, like, we all agree that we exist. Then at this point, we say, does a creator exist for this? A large portion, or actually historically a minority, they believe no God exists, right? So already the children of Adam alayhi salam are now branching out. They're going their separate ways. But once you go that separate way, there's this way now. People who are monotheists, or people who believe in a God. Now those people, there's another issue here, because believing in Allah or believing in a God doesn't necessarily mean that you are accountable. Is there an afterlife? That's the point where you have to find that we have to part ways now with many religions who don't believe in the life after. Yeah, there are many religions that believe in reincarnation, or they believe there's no afterlife. There's many religions that don't believe in Yawmul Akhirah, the life after this world. You see, strange how it is that there's, in Surah Naba is mentioned, we are invited to think about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-ayatul kawniyya, the the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the universe, to see, wow, like within the universe, we see dualities, life, we see death, we see light, we see darkness, we see day, we see nighttime, we see, winter, we see summer, we see autumn, we see spring, we see وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, we see people are in pairs. Everything is in pairs. Life, death, day, night, male, female, okay, winter, summer, okay, everything seems to have a duality. That means that a thinking person would think, observing this life, there must be an afterlife, there must be another half to this. If I see everything, if you had look in the winter and you only ever knew winter, you only saw with your senses winter, you would believe that summer is a lie. If all you ever saw was winter, the ways the trees at the moment have no leaves on them, they are bare, stripped, and the trees look actually dead. You would not believe in summer. And yet spring comes, and then you see all the blooming of, and when you see that tree in full, grandeur during the summer, you think, subhanallah, that is amazing. And you could probably be forgiven for thinking that that tree is so brimming with life, with leaves and plants and things and seeds and everything, and it's producing more seeds and everything. It will, that there is no such thing as winter. But then autumn comes, and then you see that everything falls and cascades. If you're seeing this happen time and time again, what would you say if sad, spoiling, dying, decomposing, like decomposition and renewal, decomposition and then renewal. If you're seeing that every single, what do you think happens when we die? We will be meeting Maliki Yawmiddin, right? We will be resurrected, and we will have, there's everything else has a twin. Your sun, the moon, that we you see, everything has this. So this life, then there's the next life. There's yomu, this dunya, this dunya and darul akhirah. Yeah. So when we look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being owner of the last day, it takes the surah to a different dimension. The entire time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, He is, all praise belongs to Him. He is the Lord of all the worlds, right? That already indicates to you there's something more than the world that you're currently seeing. He's the Lord of the worlds, Lord of the universes, Lord of all the creation. Malik Yawm. So that leaves that possibility open. That anything that is alameen, right, is under the ownership of the Rabb, the sustainer and the maintainer. And then you move to, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So all this information is actually talking about, if you think about it, your relationship with Allah in this life. But your relationship with Allah has a relationship, you have a new chapter in your life in the Day of Judgment. Because the Day of Judgment, Allah being, the owner of the last day, that is true now while we're in the dunya, but it's not necessarily impacting us. With the truth be known, as much as when we grew up as children, we used to think maybe, I don't know, that if you ate pork, that maybe you get struck by lightning or something. And if you lie, maybe something, but the truth is, didn't happen, did it? It doesn't happen when people do haram. When you do haram, it's so easy to do because you don't, there's nothing, the only time you feel bad about sin is if your heart is actually pure enough to feel it. And if you become so corrupted, haram deeds is like sipping water. Lying is like sipping water. Backbiting is like sipping water. Slandering is like sipping water because the heart is so corrupt, it doesn't even feel. And when you hear lies, your heart doesn't feel anything, you see. And the reason is because when the heart is corrupt now, the as the scholars say that, if the tongue is bitter, then even sweet water will taste bitter because the person's very sense of reality is now corrupted. Malik Yawmuddin is like a bucket of cold water over us now to remember, listen, that yes, Allah is Rahman Ar-Rahim, but there is a day of consequence. There is a day of reckoning. And though you do not feel the responsibility, there is a day where you will be standing. Yeah, this is the day of standing, the day of Hashr, the day of Nashr, the day of Sirat, yeah, the day of being resurrected, the day of being gathered, the day of walking the Sirat, where you'll be walking this thin line, this thin path that is sharper than a blade and thinner than a hair. And every time you did a sin in this world, as you walk it, you will fall off it and fall into the fire. And the Prophet ﷺ said, helping a Muslim in need stabilizes you on the sirat. All of these events, yeah, wal-ba'thi ba'd al-maut, yeah, all of the resurrection, the hashr, wa nashr, wa sirat, and all of these things, Allah is malik of it all. No escape. The mudaf here completely swallows up maliki yawmiddin. You see, imagine I hold my wallet up and I say, this is my wallet. None of you would say, when I hold my wallet, what about the things inside it? Well, of course they belong to me. It's got my ID, it's got my cards, it's got my. If I own the wallet, I own everything inside it. Allah is the owner of the final day, and the day of what? Malik, it is mudaf ilayh. Allah is the day, owner of the day of reckoning. Right? This is quite an expression that splits up three ideas, but each one is like, those Russian dolls. Do you remember at school you had the little Russian doll and you open it up and then there's another one inside and there's another one. This is like idafa construct, yeah? Tarkib idafi. At the end of the day, the greater thing is the Malik. The Malik. You have the Deen, right? And we can discuss various mentionings and discussions, inshallah. But we know Deen basically is Yawmul Hisab. Yeah, day of muhasabah, hisab. And then we have the day. So it's not even, a day is like the time and the place, isn't it? Right? It's the time. It's it's referring to that period of time, all of it. Yeah. When people say ayyamuna in poetry, they mean like this period of time that is our period of time. This period of time is happening inside this day of accountability is contained within this day. And this day is contained by the fact that Allah is Malik of it, and He is Malik over it. And so it's a really actually frightening idea that there is no escape, because He completely owns and possesses. As you rightly said, Ustada, that a property owner can own a fleet of properties, but if he wants to change something on the curb or on the outside of the building, he needs certain compliance or certain government permission, isn't it? He can't just start changing the outside of the building. The outside of the building is owned by the government, right? So there's compliance laws, there's laws about electricity and water and gas and how you install them. So even though he owns these things, he doesn't necessarily have complete authority of what goes inside, but ownership is important. And then there's a king who may not necessarily own everything, but he has an authority on what standards your electrical piping, your wires, and this and that in your house are, because he's the owner. Allah is has the possession and the owner, but that also gives you an indication of this sense of temporality, this sense of the kind of this ephemeral reality of this dunya, meaning that this dunya is just a temporary ownership, because he's Malik. That means that there is nothing that you own. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the owner of everything, and you'll be accountable about your inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. Ultimately, we were just custodians on the earth. When you say my money, yeah, it's your money. But the truth is that you are just custodians of the money. You're sahibul mal. Yeah. You are just ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns all your wealth. Allah owns your life.
Yeah.
Allah owns everything. So Maliki Yawmiddin is very powerful, because it's just like quite overwhelming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns it all. And it really does put fear into you that subhanallah, I made dua with some of my family and relatives. And when we put up, I sometimes make, all these dua in Arabic. They don't understand always, what is he saying? So I said, Ya Allah, if we fear putting our finger into the fire, how can we throw for a moment? If we fear putting our finger into the fire for a moment, how can we throw our whole bodies into the fire forever? Ya Allah, we cannot take it. Ya Allah, we cannot bear this. Everyone, try to imagine yourself putting your finger into the fire in your kitchen stove, even near it. Just put your finger, to put your finger in the fire for 1 minute. You would not be willing to do that, and yet you miss salah. You will not be doing that, and yet you do not want to forgive someone for someone to forgive you and save you from that fire. You do not want to practice Islam and carry Islam and enjoying good, forbid the evil, and follow the commandments, so that Allah, who is Maliki Yawmiddin, will account you on that. He will do hisab on all of those activities that you did in this world. Yeah? Ya laytani qaddamtu li hayati. You don't want to be one of those people who says, oh my God, if only I offered more in the life. Do you see? And so the relationship between the dunya and the akhirah are becoming clear now, because initially you feel quite comfortable. You're in the dunya, Allah is merciful, we are thankful to Him. But guess what? There is a day of judgment, and it's coming, and He's the owner of it, and we're all going to face it. And so we need to consider that this belief in the akhirah is a very, very important part of our deen. Why? Because it brings in accountability and eternal justice. A man can kill one person. If you ask the children, what do you do if a person, unalive, shall I use that phrase now? Is it too late to use that? A person unalives a person, right? When that person unalives a person, if you ask children or you ask parents or adults, they might say, you know what, you need to unalive him. Yeah, that's the punishment for someone who unalives someone. But the funny thing is that man can unalive 100 people. Can you unalive him 100 times?
No.
Justice has defect in this world, meaning you cannot get the full justice. That's why people, are millionaires and these Epstein files and so on. They were basically seeing, how long can I commit doing evil? Because there's no Maliki Yawmiddin. How long can I take it? Doesn't matter. You know what? Maybe I'll unalive myself when I'm in prison, and I enjoyed my life. I did whatever debauchery and sin or whatever. This is so bad. But because there's no akhirah, they think they got away with it. What's the point now?
That gives also that also gives I know it gives like it cultivates the fear in us. But I think it also, from another point of view, it also gives comfort. It gives
I
comfort to
think
the
it does.
people who are oppressed. It gives comfort
Yeah.
to the. There was also, I think there was a someone like I think a tabi'i who mentioned that if I were to have a choice between having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold me accountable on the day of judgment, or my mom, I think he mentioned mother or father, he said I will choose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over that. So it
Mm.
also gives you kind of a comfort to know that the Rabb al-Alameen, like Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, he's the one who's going to be holding me accountable, and also is going to give justice to all the oppression and
Absolutely.
everything that happened in
Yeah.
the world.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think it means also, it gives you that feeling that I think it was Hassan al Basri that someone was backbiting him and he said, give them a gift.
Mm,
Right?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
did he say give them a gift? Because he felt like, you know what, you're giving me so much ajr. You're giving me your prayers. Imagine someone backbiting. You're giving your prayers, you're
mm,
giving your fasts,
everything.
you're giving
Imagine.
your good deeds, you're
Yeah.
giving your charity, you're
Mm,
giving the reward you got for taking care of your children, you got the
yes.
reward for taking care of your parents, you
Mm,
gave the reward for every deed, you're giving it away to someone you're slandering. And this is the crazy thing, once you run out of good deeds, because maybe you don't even pray that much, maybe you don't study the deen that much, maybe you're lazy, maybe you're
mm,
stingy, you know. So if you do that, then you know what happens. When you run out on a negative balance, now you start taking my sins, now you take mine. So the person who slanders you, they have to take yours now. They
mm,
have to take
Mm.
your sins, and they have to. Can you imagine how that is?
yeah.
Subhanallah. That this
The,
is ultimate justice. In al hukmu illa lillah. That
mm,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is going to hold you accountable, and He's going to now take your deeds and from this weight on yours. Can you imagine? You got scales and you got good deeds, and you think, wow,
Mm.
my scales, I think I might just make it.
yeah.
And then they're being
Mm.
taken off. Oh,
Yeah.
look what you did there. Look
So
what this
the like
person said.
the rights of the like some of the things that I think of when I think of the day of judgment.
Mm,
And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Ghafur Rahim, right? He's the most
yes.
forgiving, and he is he's the most forgiving. But the most scariest thing that when I personally think about the day of judgment is the rights of people, because the
The
rights of
حقوق
people, Allah
العباد.
subhanahu wa ta'ala,
صح.
ya huquq al-ibad, like haqq al-ibad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't forgive that for you. Like
Mm.
that's on them to forgive you or not, which is a scary thing to know, because you kind of have comfort that, okay, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we have hope in him forgiving us, right, for our sins, for everything
Mm,
we do. But when it comes
mm.
to people, I think that's like the most scariest part, is like coming on the day of judgment and not knowing all of the people that I've hurt, all of the people that I don't know, backbited, all of the people that I've because of them, I'm going to be, maybe the scale is not gonna weigh enough for me, like the good deeds are
Just
not gonna be.
imagine though,
Yeah.
it brings a whole new dimension because Maliki Yawmiddin is also part of the ghaib. The
Yeah.
Mm.
Yawmiddin and the accountability, all of this stuff is the stuff that is beyond wal ba'athi ba'd al maut, right?
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
Now, this is amazing because that means that, say, for example, there's a group of people on WhatsApp, right? And they're
Mm.
slandering you and whatever, or gossiping about your family or
mm,
whatever, right? You go on the day of judgment and there's like a whole feast of reward,
yes.
all this
Mm.
that you were unaware of,
Yeah.
all these people. And I wonder what people do, subhanallah, where some, so many, it's the easiest reward. I think, in business, everyone wants to be a businessman these days and financially independent. I think it's the greatest passive income you can ever achieve. All the
Yeah.
tahajjud, instead of doing that, you just wake and you get everyone else's tahajjud, everyone
Yeah.
else's prayers, and everyone else's fast, all because you want to provide other people passive income. So
Yeah.
Maliki Yawmiddin is the other thing is that the fear aspect is, like, I give you an example I give to children is, what, sometimes when we were young, when we were on the streets, we find a bottle and it's, you think, oh, just smash it against the wall, something like this. Now
Mm.
we often do istighfar for the damage that we know,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
What about the fact that there's a auntie and she walked and she stepped on glass and it went through her foot and she went through so much
Yeah.
pain and she went
Mm,
home and she cried, yeah, and she went to the hospital and she was like, why me? Subhanallah, what happened?
SubhanAllah.
Why do people have to be like this? On the day of judgment, you have no idea, no
yep.
way to amend, and
That's
then
Yeah.
you get this role play kind of film of everything you did, and you will literally be accounted by someone you harmed so much on that day, all because of reckless behavior. It makes you think about not being reckless, yeah,
Yeah.
being just shooting in every direction, hoping something lands, thinking,
Yeah.
subhanallah, all of the sin and all that is accumulated of that which you know and that which you
Yeah.
do not know, all of that will be coming on the day of judgment, and you will have
Yeah.
all of your deeds taken off the scales.
It also
All
reminds
of
you,
those
Ustad, of like,
deeds. That's it.
sorry
Sorry?
to interrupt. It reminds you of an example by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, where I think it was the streets or something were not even, and he made
Mm.
them. I'm paraphrasing the example, but he made them even because he said, even I'll be asked about when the camels go over and they're tripping, subhanallah. So
Yeah,
it
he
goes
said
to
even if
show,
an animal in Syria or somewhere like
yeah,
Damascus, in Dimashq, he said something like that. He said even if one trips, I feel accountable. So this
yeah,
is the level of responsibility that people take. In leaders who think about Malik Yawmiddin. One of the hadith
yes,
has da'af in it, but it corroborates in meaning. Al ma'na sahih. That the Prophet ﷺ said that a person who's in charge of 10 people or more will arrive on day of judgment with chains
mm,
until every person. That's why a lot of people, they fancy themselves as leaders. They don't know how to be leaders. They haven't got a clue. Good
mm,
leaders have to have been good followers at the beginning. If you're a bad follower, you'll
yes,
never make a good leader. If you're a good child, you make, inshallah, you'll make a good parent. You're a good student
yeah,
of knowledge, you'll make a good teacher. Just how it works. يا خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Without the ta'allum, the ta'lim isn't going to come. And for that reason, imagine of anyone who's got mas'uliyah, anyone responsible. Leaders in this world are responsible not for 10 people, but millions.
yeah,
Imagine the chains on them, and that
Yes.
every chain will be removed only if they fulfill the right. You're responsible first. The Prophet ﷺ said, Man nuqish al hisab udhib. He who has his hisab discussed will be punished. This all brings this sense of preparation. Malik Yawmiddin means that you need to prepare and you need to work now and you can't afford to delay.
mm,
For example, um, one of the statements of the Salaf was تعلموا قبل أن تزودوا. Yeah, قبل أن تسودوا.
Mm.
سيادة يعني is learn the deen before you become responsible. Because
mm,
if you don't learn before you become responsible, few things happen. Those who have responsibilities will know, right?
mm,
Responsibility means that you're facing fast-paced events that you can't make decisions on the spot, and you
mm,
can't now check a reference book. You can't. You're in a live situation, so that's one of the reasons why that your reaction time is impeded when you're in leadership. So that means you should prepare and deal with that beforehand. Number one.
mm,
Number two is that um, you don't have the time to learn. You can't sit down to learn. You're so busy fulfilling your responsibilities. This is why you should take a person who believes in Maliki Yawmiddin would take care of his health before his illness, would
mm,
take care of time, free
yeah,
time before becoming busy, would take
mm,
care of youth and make the use of youth before they become old.
Mm.
You see, right? This is what a person should be doing if they're preparing to meet Maliki Yawmiddin. If you're going to meet
yeah,
Maliku Yawmiddin, yeah, you need to basically first prepare and
yeah,
think for yourself. The scholars say, النظر في العواقب تلقيح للعقول. That uh, thinking about عواقب, عاقبة, جمع عاقبة
mm,
صح?
Yes.
The thinking about the consequences is what? Talqih, very strange word. Talqih is like vaccinations.
mm,
The one you get
Mm.
in your arm, measles, bumps or whatever, mumps or whatever, right? It's like
yeah,
this. It's a vaccination for the brain. Because if you think about Maliki Yawmiddin and then you come back to where you are in your room in London, and then you think, right, I need to make sure that these mistakes need to be
don't happen.
avoided because I cannot bear
Yeah,
the consequence. There's another statement that is usually mentioned: صحة النظر في الأمور نجاة من الغرور. That soundness in the matters, the umur of the dunya, نجاة من الغرور. That is sound understanding of realities, okay? Meaning taking reality as not just this dunya, but knowing that behind the dunya is the akhirah waiting, right?
mm,
That you will be saved from ghurur, yeah, being deluded and thinking you're right and thinking you're fine. But guess what? You think you're right. This is a very important point. A lot of people, they think they're right, but
mm,
have they checked? Have they verified? Have they
yeah,
spoken to actual beyond chat GPT? A lot of people are chatting a lot of chat GPT, to be honest with you. And the way you know is because they have these long hyphens in everything they say. So they don't actually
yeah,
have no
But
original
if they
thought.
erase them instead.
Yeah, then they erase them. Yeah, but it's
But then
too
it's all
lazy. I say,
gently,
ChatGPT, please
kindly.
erase all long hyphens. But
Yeah.
the issue is you. I would say very important lesson that can be brought up in this is that for you to be able to be aware of the awaqib, you need to be someone who thinks independently, who can think, check,
Mm.
verify, understand the teen properly. Unfortunately, what happens is that people go on thinking they're right. And this is the scary thought. What if you think you're right? You tell other people that you're right. Your best friends tell you think you're right. And then
Yeah.
you're wrong. On the day of
Mm.
judgment, what are you going to do? No one's there
Ustad,
for you.
sorry, Ustad, on that point as well, I wanted to
Mm,
ask a question that, when it comes to, like as Muslims, obviously you should remind each other if you're going down the wrong path, you should give nasiha, right? But what if a
mm.
person keeps saying, well, you don't know what my intentions are, you don't know, like, who are you to judge? How do you deal with that? Sense, like, how do you deal with that? Because some people are trying to also flee accountability, and you're
I
trying to
think the road
protect
to
them.
hell is paved with good intentions for a reason, right?
Mm,
It's because your intentions, they can be sound, but they have
mm,
to be backed by, you have to have like ilmun sahih, then
mm.
you have niyatun sahiha, then you have
No.
amalun sahih. So when you have intentions, those intentions, what is a good one or a bad intention, is informed by ilm, by knowledge,
Yes. Yeah.
right? A person can be well intended and choose Hinduism, Sikhism over Hinduism because Sikhism is more monotheistic than
Mm,
Hinduism. That's well
mm.
intentioned. Doesn't mean he's
Yeah.
not going to be accountable for that. You see?
Yes. Yeah.
So good intentions are not good enough. That's the first thing. And the other thing is that you have to make sure that the action that you do, إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى
Mm.
وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى.
No.
That actually the awaqib, the consequences, is based on what you intended, and you will get what you intended. Meaning that your actual intention, if it's correct or not, that's not up to you. You
Mm.
can mean well, but you're still accountable. I keep telling people this. I've been saying it, I'm getting old telling the same point, really, that if you're driving through the street and you're checking your phone and you're careless and then you run someone over, right? That you can't say I didn't intend it. They will,
Yeah.
they will remove the charge of murder.
Yeah.
Okay. Murder is like, at home, you got pictures of all the people you don't like and strings and plans and a map and how you're going to destroy the person or whatever. And then you'd run them over. Yeah. Do you
Mm.
see? But that's murder. If they can find premeditation, that means that you are
Yeah.
trying to
Murder.
harm someone. But if you are just reckless, right? That's still manslaughter. You still do time. You're still accountable. And Islam is exactly like this, right? When you intend what you intend, it doesn't remove accountability. It may lighten accountability, but it means you're still accountable. Do you see?
Mm.
Right? You're still accountable into the ways that you prepared for something, what you thought about something, what effort you made to understand the matter. So Malik Yawmuddin is a real is a day is a day where you're supposed to have khawf, yeah, narju rahmataka, yeah, wa nakhsha adhabaka. We hope for your rahmah and we fear your punishment, ya Allah, because on that day you're in for a rude awakening. Malik Yawmiddin is where all your deeds and accountability it will be checked and you'll be accountable for those things. So going back to I think my sister Isra, because we've talked about Malik being Malik and Malik Yom. We've talked about how it contains all of the aspects of accountability and all your deeds. Everything is there. Okay. But then there's this another angle of there's various meanings of the word deen. Like I even know, like when, for example, al kayisu man dana nafsahu. Yeah. Yeah. So this is another way the word deen is used. Mandana, the smart person. Yeah. Mandana nafsahu. Man hasaba nafsah. بمعنى ذلك. Yeah. That the one who is smart is the one who accounts himself. Yeah. And والعاجز والأحمق, isn't it?
Mm.
It's من اتبع نفسه هواء, who follows their desires. Yeah. وتمنى على الله التمني, or
Mm.
al-amani, actually.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. The one who basically has wishful thoughts. So here the Prophet ﷺ saying a A smart person is man, is al-kaysu man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut, and he works for what's after death. Do you see? So really what we should be doing is we should be thinking about, a lot of people envy sin. A lot of Muslims, they envy people who are sinning. Okay. For example, you might think, oh, someone's done something bad to me, I want to have revenge, right? Or someone has stolen from me, I want to steal from them, or like a dog bites you. My father used to say, if a dog bites you, you're going to bite the dog back. You cannot be so uncouth, right? So why is that a problem? Because you haven't thought it through. What have you thought through? Let me break it down for everybody. When the person has done something and you want revenge, ask yourself that the thing that we have this phrase, many Muslims have said it, why do they get away with it? Why do they get to do that?
Yeah.
But the
Yes.
funny thing is that's because you have not factored in Maliki Yawmiddin. Because when you factor in Maliki Yawmiddin, you're going to say to yourself that if he's the owner and the master, like the owner and the king of the last day, that person who's done this thing, they've done the crime, do you want to do the time? Right? If someone has a lot of wealth through haram means, ask yourself, would I like to pay what they're paying in the akhirah? No, then there's nothing to envy. If someone is in a high position, but the high position was earned through various bad behaviors and all of these things, right? They worked their way up the ladder so that they could try to get a position or try to get power. I don't know about that in my personal position because I founded my org. I started but generally speaking, people try to do that. You have to think, right? Why did are you willing to pay that price? Because if someone does some harm to you, ask yourself and imagine the harm in the day of judgment, the punishment, and say, do I envy the punishment? Then I do not envy the act. If you cannot envy the consequence, do not envy the act itself in this world. You see, be smart enough to realize that the akhirah, the scholars, they say, view very beautifully, they say, ibda bin nihaya. Ibda bin nihaya. Start at the end. Start at the end. Don't start at the beginning. Because if you start at the beginning, I'm in dunya, I have time, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, I'm busy. Okay, you'll say all of these things, right? I gotta just love myself or something like this, right? But if you understand, if you start at the end, right, and work your way backwards, then you will realize that your life would be shaped, because you realize I'm in front of Allah and I have to answer for all of these things. So guess what? I'm going to shape my life and shape the limited life for the timeless life. You see? So this is, Sheikh Akram said it very nicely. He said the ultimate problem of problems. He said the ultimate problems of problems isn't, world poverty. It's not. The ultimate poverty isn't oppression. The ultimate problem is not, people who are stealing or lying. The ultimate problem isn't any of these things. The ultimate problem is this: a day will come where you are in front of your Lord with no means to change your circumstances, to go back and to change anything. And Allah will be asking you questions, right? And you will be left wanting. You will be like, how am I going to answer this question in front of Al-Malik? How am I going to answer Al-Malik? I'm before the king and the owner of all. How am I going to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now? Now, when you start with that day, all of us should now imagine that we're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Work your way backwards to today, please. Work your way back to your weekly routine. Do you see? Do you spend one part of the week studying and one part serving? Every Muslim should have one part where they're serving the ummah and another part where they're learning. Always, continuously, for the rest of your days, most likely. That's what's going to have to happen. If you're not doing that, then how are you going to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That you weren't even pursuing knowledge, because knowledge is what saves you from the fire. Because knowledge makes you aware of your obligations. So there's a very nice, they say ignorance is bliss. Oh, if I don't learn, then I don't know about my responsibilities. And if I don't know about my responsibilities, there is no consequence. This is very dangerous because the consequences do not care, yeah, whether you're not aware of them. Accountability, you cannot plead, ignorance, right? You can only plead ignorance if knowledge isn't available to you, right? Not if you don't seek it. So this is why seeking knowledge is so important for those people who believe in Malik Yawmuddin. Ustada, you were going to mention some meanings of deen, linguistic meanings. So I'll leave it to the Arabs.
Yes, so there's the scholars mentioned that in the deen, in the dictionary, Lisan al-Arab, it mentions that deen means coercion and obedience. So dintuhum fadanu means I coerced them, so they obeyed. That's one of the meanings. And there's also, deen also means the reward and the prize. You say dintuhu for his action, dainan, to mean
Mm,
I rewarded him. So that's
mm.
also one of the meanings is reward and prize. And also deen means accounting. So Yom ad-Din means the day of recompense.
يوم المحاسبة يوم الحساب.
Deen also, yeah, and the deen also means sharia and sultan, law and authority. That's also one of the meanings of, and also like deen, which we know that means Yawm al-Qiyamah. Yawm al-Qiyamah also has lots of names, like has a tama, it has a sakha, it has Yawm al-Firar,
Mm,
it has many, 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 many names in the Quran that are mentioned.
mm.
But yes, that's um, the meanings of the deen linguistically, one of them or some of them.
Yeah. So
And
the
yeah,
word deen is quite a flexible word then, isn't it? Sometimes it's used to represent, authority and sulta. Other times it's related to, gift, or it means, so this deen, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the Umar ibn al-Khattab that, Allah sent his Jibril alayhi salam to teach you your deen.
mm,
This deen is normally outside of these contexts, the word deen really means deenul Islam, the way of life of Islam. Yeah. But here it's very specific, it's a day of debt. So one of
mm,
the statements Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Hadith Qudsi, he will approach and he would say that he is Anad Dayyan. Yeah. That he
yeah,
would say the Anal Malik. So, like we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Maliki Yawmiddin, He say Anal Maliku wa Anad Dayyan. Yeah, that I am the
mm,
king and I am the one who all debts and all things will be settled. You see? So, this is
mm,
very important that it's the day of debt because it's the day where we will repay for everything that we have been given custodianship of, and we will pay every person that we have oppressed. And it's important. But I also wanted another dimension that I saw in this, and to kind of take this home, hopefully, inshallah, is the fact that you could say that Malik means that Allah is the gatekeeper. We talk about gatekeeping. Allah is the gatekeeper for the day of judgment. Okay. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And as a
yes,
result of that, that also means that sometimes people misuse accountability. Do you see? So like sometimes you have parents who will say that unless you do a sin or unless you abandon an obligation, okay, you have to follow me, right? Because without following me and obeying me, you will basically go to Jahannam, right? Sometimes we hear about this. They use the term, a very lazy term, to be honest with you. It's a very lazy, loose term called spiritual abuse. It's for those often used by people who don't understand the deen, and then they use these kind of pop psychology terms. But what we can say is that it has precedent in Islam when understood correctly. Do you see? Because we can say kalimatu haqqin yuradu bihi batil, a word of truth which has a meaning or intention of batil. So, for example, a parent who basically says, I will block you on the day of judgment. You cannot block your children on the day of judgment. Using this very kind of gatekeeping language, you can say that Allah said that if the father's angry with you, Allah is angry with you. The Prophet ﷺ said this rather. Yeah. You can mention accountability in front of Allah, but you can't use that accountability to then be disproportionate. So, for example, a parent cannot use accountability to be disproportionately harsh. Yeah, they can be harsh, but not disproportionately harsh to their children. A child okay, can also, when it comes to their parents, they can also have a certain level of obedience to their parents, but that cannot be disproportionate to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for them. Does that make sense? So this is very important that in accountability, because it's the day of accountability, we need to apply the idea that actually we cannot try to force our hand in this world to try and, under the pretext of I want justice, I'm going to abuse people, swear at people, do what I want, and all these things. To be honest with you, when you see this on YouTube and Facebook and social media, what you realize is you want justice, but you just gave a bad example to thousands of youngsters who are going to use your swear words, your insulting words, because they're going to think it's okay to be like that. Do you see? And this is why we need to understand that we should not play gods. What we need to do is play slaves, because that's what we are, which is you seek justice within a certain remit and realize that beyond some things, they're not your place. It's not your place to be Maliki Yawmuddin. You're not the gatekeeper. You can't, as an imam, say that if you don't pray in my masjid, you may not go to Jannah. If you don't join my sect, you will not go to Jannah. Or if you don't join my side, actually, you're not the one who's presiding over the final day. Presiding over the final day is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and none other. So it's very important that people don't misuse the day of judgment to basically almost act as if they're the ones who let people into Jannah or push people into hell. This is something. Allah is Malik Yawmuddin. He is the one who will account us on that day. And it's very important that in the month of Ramadan, I would suggest everybody go away and think about every single person that is owed an apology, right?
Yes.
Any single person that you can think of and apologizing, I recommend everybody apologize. Get used to apologizing. Get used to saying sorry. I personally try my best to have no one in the earth that thinks he's an apology. I'll apologize. That's how we should try our best to be that. It takes effort. And the reason why that is because you'd rather someone, even if they've done more wrong, humble yourself and apologize, because these people who never apologize, they will face Malik Yawmuddin. And you will face
Yes.
Malik Yawmuddin saying, I did what I could and I put forward what I could. Everyone in Ramadan needs to try to do this. Try to apologize. People don't take your apology, that's fine. But you should go away and think that, um, I need to do my part, because on the day of judgment, it is no longer, it's like anything. Once the debt collectors take you to court, you can't say, I'll pay the original amount. Now you
Yeah.
have to pay the fine, you have the bailiffs, you have, isn't it? You can't go back
Additional
now,
costs. Yeah.
right? So similarly, but in a more ultimate and more decisive sense, on that day of judgment, you cannot say, don't worry, I will say sorry. Yeah, the day, it's not the Yawmuddin is not the day of ta'assuf. It's not the day of apologies. It's finished. Apologies are in
Yeah.
this world. Yeah. So I recommend everybody who owes someone an apology to find them and apologize. Sometimes, people apologize. You don't want to apologize to someone because you don't want them to know that you spoke ill of them, for example.
Mm.
Do you see? Say, look, if I've wronged you and I've wronged you in any way, I apologize. Even make it general, but don't avoid apologizing, because the last thing you want is that person to find out on the day of judgment. Get it all clear in this world. Anyone who avoids reconciliation is clearly wanting that to happen on their day of judgment, isn't it? Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, and that day is going to be too late as well as that. It reminds you of, like the muhasaba is really, really crucial. And it reminds me of a beautiful spiritual maxim from Sheikh Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, where he says, if a person held himself accountable just like he holds others accountable, his mistakes would be less and he would be closer to perfection.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. حاسبوا قبل أن تحاسبوا. حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا.
Mm.
Take stock of yourself before you are taken account on their judgment. What a frightening day, right? Which is what actually prepares, like this is tamheed, ustada, yeah? This paves the ground for you to want to cry out. And Allah gives you the avenue to cry out, to say, Iyaka na'budu.
Yeah.
And this is now iltifat, yeah? We'll cover this from next session, that now you've been speaking in the third person, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin. And then all of a sudden, Iyaka. Now you're directly addressing Allah as the second person. Yeah, you're saying إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So this, inshallah, we'll cover next session. But I think, alhamdulillah, we've covered a lot about accountability, a lot about the afterlife impacting your behavior in this life, the sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually an owner of all the things that He possesses and He owns, and we are merely custodians of anything we have in this world. Even our children are not our possessions, we are custodians of our children. He is the owner of everything, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the authority of everything as well. And lastly, that, and I can't endorse this any more, but if you owe people apologies, find them in the month of Ramadan. Use Ramadan as the excuse, the escape, scapegoat, and apologize to people and reconcile before the day of judgment comes. Yeah. Okay. Stubbornness. You can feel that I'm very stubborn. Yeah. Some people are very stubborn. Let me tell you something about stubbornness. Stubbornness can resist people trying to comfort you. Stubbornness can be resisted by people trying to account you. No, I don't care. Like this, some people are like this. Stubbornness can resist even a beating, but stubbornness cannot withstand waqudu an-nar. The waqudu an-nar. You cannot withstand the fire of hell. Your stubbornness on the day of judgment will be broken into pieces. It will be decimated. And for that reason, it's better to not be stubborn in the dunya. Feel accountable, and apologize to those who you owe apologies to.
It's a really good point, Ustad, that you ended on there about the apology. And, if we owe an apology to anyone, that we should go and seek that actively. Because at the end of the day, like you said, the stubbornness, yes, you might have it on this dunya, but it's going to be destroyed in the akhirah. And this ayah for me specifically reminded me how our deen, subhanAllah, is such a preventative measure that Allah is telling us that, look, this time is going to come for you. So take account of what you're doing right now, here and now, so that when it comes to that day, that, you're able to actually pass the test, inshallah. But Jazakumullah khair to yourself, Ustad Moinul, and also Ustada Isra. It's been really
to both of you as well.
Well, yeah, it's been it's a really good discussion that we've had, and it's a lot for me to ponder and reflect upon. And Jazakumullah khair to all of the viewers today. And until tomorrow, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.